This is the MYFORD University Podcast, episode 17. We're going to talk about creative thinking, your secret weapon for solving problems smarter. Welcome, colleagues, to MYFORD University Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm George Sloan, and today we're going to talk about a skill that doesn't get enough credit in the business world, but it absolutely should. We are talking about creative thinking, the ability to come up with new, original, and useful solutions to real problems. This is not fluffy creativity. It's not an art class. We're talking about real-world, high-leverage creative thinking that solves problems and opens doors. Now, creative thinking is a great skill, and it can get you out of a jam. It can get your business to stand out. It can turn things around, whether if you're stuck in a particular situation, turn it actually into a breakthrough. So with that, let's get into it. What is creative thinking? Let's define it straight up. Creative thinking is the ability to generate ideas that are new, useful, and unexpected. It's about solving problems differently and making connections that others don't see. This is not artsy-fartsy. This is thinking sort of outside the box. It's looking at things from a different perspective and coming up with a new solution that might seem a little unusual. Again, it's a different approach. And I mentioned it's thinking, outside the box, but it's not just about thinking outside the box. It's more than that. Sometimes it's actually saying, why is the box at all? Or why is it even there? What are we worried about the box? Maybe the box is the problem. So here's what creative thinking really is. It's about curiosity. It's about flexibility. It's the willingness to explore even when the answer is not obvious. And most of all, it's a skill, not a talent you're born with, a skill you can develop through practice. Folks, my favorite approach to this, and it goes to my second favorite question, what if? Ask what if. What if we tried something different? What if we tried not doing it that way? What if we took a totally new approach? That's where you get into creative thinking. And sometimes some amazing breakthroughs come through. So let's talk about why creative thinking matters. You're probably sitting there, so what? Well, it's important. And here's why. In today's world, everyone is doing the same thing. Same strategies, same formulas, same best practices. Now, that's a good way to possibly get started or keep rolling, but eventually it's going to get old, and if you're not changing and modifying and iterating with the times and coming up with creative approaches, you're going to fall behind. So creativity is what sets you apart, okay? In business, creative thinking will help you do the following. You can cut through the noise. You can unlock new markets. You can fix old problems. You can save money. You can save time. You can save energy. It builds better products, not just cheaper ones. Sometimes you get what you pay for, so be careful with that. Sometimes it's worth paying a little more, because sometimes, you can think about the old expression, cheap things are seldom good and good things are seldom cheap. So in your career, I think creative thinkers are the ones who tend to move up. They may not even realize they're creative thinkers. Another way to think of this, if you don't want to use the creative thinking moniker, you can sit there and go, well, I'm a problem solver. I'm a troubleshooter. Well, most problem solvers and troubleshooters use creative thinking. So don't kid yourself. It's not because these folks work harder. It's because they bring new value. And new value typically comes from doing something different. And creative thinking helps you get there. Creativity is becoming a future-proof tool that you're going to need, because it's anything that is repeatable. I mean, it's if you're doing the same old repetitive tasks, AI can do it and you're going to be replaced. AI is not very creative. AI tends to work on rote. So you want to make sure that anything that's repeatable, you want to move away from a little bit. And creative thinking is one of those tools to make you future-proof. So what AI can't do is think laterally. And by the way, creative thinking is thinking laterally, not linear thinking. Another tongue twister. So you want to be able to pivot fast, and you want to break the rules in smart ways. And again, that goes back to what I was talking about, the idea of problem solvers, troubleshooters. They come in, everyone is stuck, the wheels have fallen off it, and it's stuck in the mud. I've had that many a time. I've walked in and with fresh eyes, I've said, well, what if we tried this, and what if we tried that, and I'm going to call so-and-so and see what their thoughts are, and then suddenly the wheels are back on, and it's starting to move, and it's not stuck in the mud. It happens many, many times in my line of work of project management and process improvements. All right, so let's talk about who needs creative thinking. Honestly, this is another one. Everyone. Now, creative thinking is something that you actually start out with as a child when you're doing, experiments and tests to try to figure out the world and come up with solutions. And somewhere along the way, I think we start to forget it. But let's talk about, from a business perspective, who needs creative thinking. If you're a small business owner, you need creative thinking. Why? You want to be able to pivot, you want to stand out, and you want to grow with very limited resources, right? If you're in corporate, you need to fix broken systems and offer new value. You do that, you're a star and you shine and you start moving up. You're a troubleshooter, a problem solver, remember? If you're a freelancer, you need it to differentiate yourself from a crowded market of freelancers. If you're a parent, you need it to juggle time, attention, and chaos. Often parents multitask, but they find ways to do things, they call it hacks these days, but you find ways to do things that are unusual or different, and creative thinking is where the wellspring of all of those things. If you're a student or an educator, you need it to teach and learn more effectively, right? So the bottom line is, anyone who solves problems benefits from thinking more creatively. So now you're thinking, okay, when can I use creative thinking? Again, you don't need to use it 24/7, but you do need to call upon it when you're stuck. I always use that analogy. I came into a situation where they had something that was stuck in the proverbial mud and the wheels had fallen off, and I, with the help of one or two other people, were able to get it back up and running and moving along after months of sitting. We had it moving in about a week. So creative thinking, when you're stuck, good time to use it. Another time is when you hit a wall. Sometimes you have to come up with new approaches. Do you try to go through the wall, around the wall, over the wall, under the wall? Creative thinking helps you with that. Another approach, the usual solution isn't cutting it. Things change. Times change. Technology changes. And you've got to change with it. And creative thinking helps you come up with new ways, faster, better, cheaper sometimes, to do it, right? Another approach, if you're facing some kind of a constraint, say you're a small business and you don't have a big budget, or you have limited time, or you don't have enough people, sometimes you have to get creative. Entrepreneurs, their whole day is spent, troubleshooting problems and coming up with creative ways to get the job done. All right. If you want to stand out instead of blending in, again, if you become a troubleshooter or a problem solver, you become in demand and your star starts to shine and starts to rise. Creative thinking is a tool. You pull it out when the job calls for it, right? Along with all the other thinking methodologies. Again, you should check out MYFORDuniversity.com, the blog. There's plenty of thinking methodology articles there to get you the juices flowing and get you going on new approaches to thinking. Again, all things you should have learned in college, but you don't need to do 4 years and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get it. All right, where does creative thinking apply? Well, that's what I love about creativity. It applies almost anywhere and everywhere, right? So let's give a couple examples. In business strategy, what if we stopped selling and started educating? So a slightly different sales model. In product design, what if we simplified this to one button? That's what Steve Jobs was all about. And the guy from Braun, Dieter Rams, I think his name was, he always pushed to simplify it to one button. In operations, what if we flipped the process entirely? right? That flip process, doesn't that sound like inversion thinking? We talked about that. Or even first principles thinking. All right, you could also use it in your personal life. What if I worked 4 days and made more by specializing? Listen, this is not about being random. It's about being intentional with different options. There's more than one way to skin the proverbial cat, they say. So always have a couple different approaches. Always be willing to listen to other approaches. I sometimes get doses of inspiration by listening to other people, and I'll take something they say and turn it a little bit for my situation and come up with a creative new solution. And you can do the same. It's not that complicated. All right, my favorite part. How do we think creatively? Well, I'm going to give you my 6-step approach to building this particular creative thinking muscle. Okay? Step 1, it's always the same approach that we start with. Define the real problem. Make sure you're fixing the right thing or adjusting. Most people try to fix the symptoms. You don't want to put a Band-Aid on a major laceration. You're going to need stitches. So make sure that you get to the real problem. Okay? Creative thinkers dig a lot deeper than the average person. They use the 5 whys and ask, what's really going on here? What are the 5 whys? That gets back to root cause analysis, the fishbone diagram. It's part of root cause analysis. Again, there's an article on MYFORDuniversity.com. You want to learn more about that. But ask a number of whys until you get to the real problem. Now, once you've defined the real problem, you can move on to step 2. You're going to challenge every assumption. There's that word I can't stand. Don't ever accept this is how we've always done it. I've told that story before. Just because it's the way you've always done it doesn't mean it's the way you're going to continue to do it, because you may have no choice. When I coach or consult, I avoid the word assume. I say we suspect or we conclude. Again, my NASIC model. No assumptions, suspect, investigate, and conclude. NASIC. This keeps you honest and it keeps you open to new thinking. Again, we've talked about intellectual curiosity and having an open mind, right? Then you're ready for step 3. Go for quantity fast. Now, I've talked about brainstorming. There's also an article on that on the website. You can brainstorm alone or you can brainstorm with other people. I recommend with other people sometimes because you'll get pieces of ideas that you can put together and come up with great solutions. But you want to go for quantity, just like in brainstorming. Most people will stop after 3 ideas. That's a big, big mistake. You need 15 to 20 good ideas to get some good stuff. Some of it's going to be crap, some of it's going to be mediocre, and some of it's going to be good, and you may even get one that's great. You want to use mind maps, you want to use prompts, you even want to do random word generators if you have to. Volume leads to quality. So quantity in this particular case is a good thing because you will get to the quality ideas. Now, once you've done that and you've culled the better ideas and put them to the top, you want to move on to step 4. You want to remix the existing ideas. Creativity doesn't have to be 100% original. Some artists are quoted with saying, and I think even Einstein said it, some of my best ideas were stolen. I just changed it up enough to make it my own, right? So it doesn't have to be 100% original. It's often about combining things that haven't been combined yet. That's where I got into the idea, where I talk about it, and I've mentioned it even in this particular podcast. Some of my best ideas come from listening to someone else's idea and another guy's idea, and I take the 2 ideas and I create a third idea that comes up with something that is quality. That's why it's sometimes good to collaborate in a small group. Okay, you want another example? The smartphone. The smartphone is a phone, a computer, a GPS, a camera, a music player. None of that was new. It was just cleverly integrated. Thank you, Steve Jobs. I once saw a great photo image. There was like 40 or 50 items at the time, it's probably more now, that they had a picture of that was all, they had the phone in the middle, and it was all the things around it that it had basically replaced. That included some of these things we talked about. Phone even has a flashlight. Again, all in one all-encompassing device. All right. Step 5, you want to test something fast. I love prototyping, rapid prototyping. Don't just think, do. Do something. Start. Build a draft. Build a mock-up. Build a prototype. Try a sketch. Launch a basic version of it. Just get something out there. Why? Because you want to be able to play with it, touch it, feel it. You want customers to see it, play with it, touch it, feel it. And then they give you feedback. And that feedback loop will accelerate your creative thinking faster than any book or anything else might. Create a prototype and test it. And you can refine it and iterate. That's step number 6. Creativity is not a one-shot deal. The best ideas evolve. You might want to start with something decent and through iteration, make it brilliant. I always say, I love an elegant solution, but I'm willing to start with a workable solution. I've often made the comment, give me a workable solution that's good enough, and then we can work on putting lipstick on it and pretty it up and make it an elegant solution. We can always make it better, but we have to have something that works to start. So you want to refine and iterate. You want to think in terms of loops. Come up with the idea, test it, improve, repeat. New idea, test, improve, repeat. And eventually, you'll get it. Why do you think software and phones have different versions? What are we on, iPhone 16 now? 17 coming down the pike? Because each iteration, they're making improvements. I wish they'd make some bigger improvements because, honestly, they seem very incremental. But it's still an improvement over the last one. All right. Let's talk about real-life examples. Let me give you 3. We'll talk about the designer. A designer who's not getting traction with his clients, and instead of doing more cold outreach, they create a productized service and build templates to sell passively. Yes, you can do active, where you go and make cold calls and you chase people down, or you can do something passive. And a designer that created 3 income streams with 1 creative shift. Okay? Let's talk about another one, the manager. Managers, in many cases, are swamped in meetings. Sometimes they're double and triple booked. I don't know how they're so disorganized, but whatever. But instead of working harder, I knew a manager who canceled half her meetings and moved the updates to a video and then empowered her team to make more decisions without her. Sometimes managers get stuck in micromanaging and they need to learn how to delegate. When you start moving from being a pure manager to a delegator and someone who solves problems and eliminates blockers, you then move into being a leader. We'll be talking more about that on MYFORD University. Anyway, boom, in 5 hours, she just saved 1 week. So you can compress and crunch things down, but it just requires a little bit of creative thinking. All right. What if you're a parent and you want more quality time with your kids? Instead of fighting the clock, build some rituals. 10-minute bedtime storytelling. Errand adventures. You're going to run errands anyways and make an adventure out of it. And Sunday dad dinners. What's the point? The parent doesn't need to find extra time. They just need to design the time. All right, my personal mindset. I do not accept or expect to get the right answer the first time. I also don't expect the obvious answer. When I feel stuck, I zoom out and I ask myself, what if I'm solving the wrong problem? What if someone from a totally different industry, what would they try? What's something totally ridiculous just to break the pattern? Sometimes those ridiculous ideas spark some of the greatest and most useful ideas I've had. So that's how creativity works. It's weird, then it's possible, then it's useful, then it's profitable. I'll give you another short story. Sometimes you need to think about a problem, then put it down, step away from it, sleep on it overnight, and then something sometimes magical happens when you're taking a shower or you're brushing your teeth in the mirror. suddenly your subconscious mind has been working on the problem all night long, and you have a burst of inspiration. I know some of you have felt and experienced that. I've heard other people talk about it, and it's true. It's happened to me. So sometimes load your mind up and then step away and let your mind do the work in the background, and suddenly, like a bolt of lightning, you get inspiration. That's also creative thinking. All right, give you another challenge to think about. Pick a problem that you're stuck on, write down your assumptions that you've been making, flip the assumptions, and set a timer for 10 minutes, come up with 15 different ideas. Then try one, even if it's odd. If it doesn't work, that's not a problem. It doesn't always have to work. Some need to be tested and to be eliminated. It just has to get you moving. And then once you get moving, again, that's when that bolt of lightning inspiration will hit you. I mean, this is how creative thinkers operate. They move forward by thinking differently. So take that to heart, try it, see how it works. I'd love to hear back from you on it. Some final thoughts. I mean, the world is changing and fast. It's getting faster and faster. As we all are finding out, look, the old answers are not going to solve some of the new problems. So you're going to need to come up with some new ways to solve new problems. And creative thinking gives you new angles, new energy, new outcome. It's not fluff, it's fuel. So the next time you're feeling stuck, don't push harder, push a little smarter. Use a little creative thinking. Be curious, be weird, be bold. You never know. Ultimately, the people who are going to win, it's not just because they're smart. They're sometimes willing to step back and use another tool called creativity. So that's it for today's episode of the MYFORD University podcast. If you want the full article, again, it's on the myforduniversity.com/blog. Please, comment. Love to hear back from you on some of this. And if you found it helpful, please share it with someone who needs a mental reset or a creative nudge. So until next time, think smarter, think differently, and think like a builder. Learn it fast, apply it faster. We'll see you the next time.